Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Break it down. There was some big news. Do want to start with Arkansas, and do want to start with some big news over the weekend. Now, if you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod or Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, by the way, if you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button. Make sure you got the notifications on. But if you are a subscriber of the show, you know that on Sunday when the DJ Wagner news popped, we were live on the scene reacting to it. By the way, shout out to all of you who joined the live stream when it happened. We had like 250 of you on a Sunday night Memorial Day weekend. Shout out to Pam, the UK fan, who showed up like Braveheart, ready to take on all the Arkansas fans that were in the chat at that hour. But DJ Wagner commits to Arkansas. I'm not going to rehash everything here. I did a live reaction on Sunday. It's been up for 48 hours now. If you missed any of it, go back. All I will say is I think he's a totally undervalued player. I think he gets such a bad rap. He played very well early in the season. He gets hurt. He comes back right as Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham are ascending. He's not 100%, and he gets all the blame for everything that went wrong. And oh, by the way, what went wrong? Kentucky finished second in the SEC, got a 3 seed overall. But I just think he's gotten a totally bad rap. I think it's totally unfair. But again, I want to switch gears because if you missed that, that has been available for 48 hours. But there actually was some very interesting breaking news on Tuesday involving another player that many thought Arkansas was in the mix for, and it was a player named Egor Demin. And so Egor Demin, I think we've talked about him on this show. I know we definitely did some kind of standalone clips and talked about a lot of different stuff about him on the YouTube channel, but in full shows, I don't know. But this kid is a 6'8" player. He is from Russia, and he is believed to be, of players that are not yet draft eligible. In other words, he is not yet eligible by age, believed to be one of the best players in the world. He's from Russia originally, 6'8". He can play guard. He can play forward. He can handle the ball. He can create. He can distribute for others. And because he's not draft eligible, he's been playing in Europe, and he's frankly been crushing it, okay? And so over the last couple weeks, there has been a lot of speculation about could he come to college to play D1 basketball. Early on, Illinois was perceived to be a favorite. Then they kind of faded. Then BYU was perceived to be the favorite. And it was really about maybe 10 or so days ago. It was maybe a week before the holiday weekend. I think it was Shirley Donovan was one of the first ones to link Arkansas to Egor Demin. And so Egor Demin, the recruitment's interesting. It's quiet. It's not quiet. What's going on? And I'll tell you, last week, there was real buzz that Egor Demin not only would commit to Arkansas, but that he had silently committed to Arkansas. Well, I bring it up to say, if you listen to this show, I know I did the Natty State Discord on Thursday. I said, I have not heard that. And I had actually heard that BYU felt like they were in great position. And I'll just be honest, I think I can say it now. I think they felt like it was done weeks ago, and it was more of an admissions thing on their end. They had to make sure that he was admitted to the school before they wanted to publicly announce it. Well, I bring it up because Egor Demin on Tuesday morning via Woj. You know it's a big story involving a big prospect when Woj gets involved. He breaks the story probably about, I want to say maybe 10 a.m. Eastern time, 7 Pacific, something like that, that Egor Demin, one of the top high school age players anywhere in the world, a player that ESPN has projected as a top 10 pick in the 2025 NBA draft, chooses BYU. And listen, I don't get a lot of stuff right, but I never fully believe the Arkansas smoke. And I think there's really two different conversations to have. One, we got to give our flowers to BYU, which I will do here in just a moment. But I want to start with Arkansas because I think the conversation at Arkansas is, okay, we thought going into the weekend we were getting DJ Wagner. That happens. We thought we were getting Egor Demin. That doesn't happen. And now we're entering June. John Calipari and the Razorbacks have just 8 scholarship players. And I don't know that it's time to panic, but it is time to ask, like, okay, what are the next steps if we don't get Egor Demin, which we didn't because, again, he committed to BYU. So from the Arkansas perspective, and if you're a BYU fan, I promise we'll get to you momentarily. From the Arkansas perspective, I'll be honest, I don't think it's time to panic for a number of different reasons. First of all, as everybody knows, because we've talked about it quite a bit, the NBA draft deadline is on Wednesday night. So Wednesday, midnight Eastern, we are going to find out who's returning to college, who's going pro. But in addition to the guys that return that are going back to a specific college, so Mark Sears, we know if he comes back, he's got to go back to Alabama. If Caleb Love comes back, we know he's got to go back to Arizona. There are a number of players who are still in the transfer portal that are available and actively going into recruitments if they decide to come back. Obviously, the big names that have been tied to Arkansas, the first one, we've talked about him a ton. It is Coleman Hawkins, forward, Illinois, really good player. I put out my top 100 portal rankings, the top 100 players that I believe entered the portal this offseason. I have Coleman Hawkins at number 4. I believe he is that kind of player, 13 points a game, 6 rebounds per game, 37 or so percent three-point shooting at 6'10". And I think what's interesting about him is that he can play both on the ball, he can play both kind of a small ball 5. That was kind of the role that Illinois used him in. But he's also comfortable playing at the 4, which obviously if Arkansas seriously pursues him, that feels like where he would probably play because Arkansas has Jonas Adu, Arkansas has Big Z. So to me, Coleman Hawkins, obviously now that you're at 8, Coleman Hawkins probably becomes a priority if he decides to return to college. And by the way, we're recording at 6:35 Eastern time. This is subject to change. If you're listening on Wednesday and the deadline already passed and Coleman Hawkins is in the NBA, don't blame me. I'm just reporting what we know in real time. The other big name, and we'll certainly get to him when we talk a little bit about Kentucky, but it's Wooga Poplar, who, of course, played at Miami this past year. 13 points per game in the NBA draft. This one, I'll be honest, it doesn't feel like he's staying in the NBA draft. He might have even already officially withdrew. Forgive me. I'm trying to keep up with everything, but it's pretty hard here. But Wooga Poplar, 13 points per game, interesting player, and we'll talk about him more when we get to Mark Pope and the moves that he's got to make. But really good scorer. He was averaging about 17 a game before an injury this year. Comes back, rolls kind of weird, goes down to about 13 points a game, struggles the second half of the year. But my guess would be those are the two kind of priorities in the portal if either or both withdraws from the NBA draft. Beyond that, the one thing I'd also say is this. By the way, I like the 8 that they have, which we'll get into in a minute. But Cal always has a way of figuring out a guy or two at the last minute in case of crisis. I mean, you could just go back to this time last year. Do you remember this time last year? You remember Kentucky entered June, post-NBA draft deadline, with 5 freshmen. We know who they were: Reed Shepherd, Rob Dillingham, DJ Wagner, Aaron Bradshaw, and Justin Edwards. They had Adu Thiero, Agata Onyenso, and that was it. They had 7 players, 5 freshmen. Now Antonio Reeves ends up, he's in the portal, he withdraws. But then Cal did some work over the course of the summer. Now, some of it was because of injuries, but he added Jordan Burks, 4-star, high school player. He added Joey Hart, who was basically an end-of-the-bench guy. He added Trey Mitchell, transfer from West Virginia. That was unique circumstances. Bob Huggins gets fired. But Cal, and Big Z, obviously, too. But Cal always has a way of figuring out on the fly if he needs a guy or two, figuring out a way to fill out the roster. But let me wrap on the Arkansas part of this conversation by saying this. I don't really think that John Calipari has to go crazy trying to fill out roster spots 9, 10, 11, and 12. And I've said it since last week. I've said it on every platform. I went on John Neighbor's show last Thursday and said the same thing. Assuming you got DJ Wagner, and you did, I actually like the 8 that they have. I think the 8 are all really good. So the 8 are for people scoring at home. 3 transfers from Kentucky: DJ Wagner, Adu Thiero, Big Z. 3 freshmen: Carter Knox, McDonald's All-American. Boogie Flam, McDonald's All-American. Billy Richmond, top 25 prospect. And then you have the 2 transfers from other schools, Jonas Adu and John L. Davis. And so if you look at that team, tell me what they don't have. You have your true point guard in DJ Wagner, who I'm higher on than most. John L. Davis, 18-point-a-game scorer at Florida Atlantic, can shoot the ball, can fill up the basket, this and that. Boogie Fland can kind of be the backup point guard, secondary ball handler, but he can make plays off the bounce as well. You got 2 really good wings in Carter Knox and Billy Richmond. And I've said it all along. I think Adu Thiero is best at the 4 spot. I believe he is an all-SEC caliber guy waiting to happen. I believe he is a guy that will play in the NBA. And listen, I try to give Cal a pass on stuff. I think he didn't know how to. By the end of the year, I think Adu Thiero was the guy that needed to be playing more last year that I hope to God he doesn't recruit over at Arkansas. And then, of course, you have Jonas Adu and Big Z in the front court at the 5 spot. And so when I look at that team, 2 or 3 ball handlers, pretty good 3-point shooting, maybe not great. 2 wings, 2 centers, Adu at the 4. I think Big Z, you can play with Jonas Adu. I don't think you need that much. And so, yes, you do need more bodies because you got to be able to at least have 10 to play 5-on-5. But I don't think if Coleman Hawkins stays in the draft, if Wooga Poplar chooses somewhere else, and I would say as of today, I don't believe Arkansas is the favorite. I don't think you got to freak out. I think instead it's the exact opposite. I think instead you have 8 really good players, and then from there it's about 9, 10, 11 finding bodies to fill out the roster that are comfortable playing a role and comfortable being a backup. I've said it consistently. I'm not going to back off of it because I truly believe it. There are still guys in the portal. We might not even know their names yet that are good enough to play 7, 8, 9 minutes, 10 minutes a game in the SEC, that are good enough to be the 9th man or 10th man on a really good college basketball team. And so I don't think you need to go big game hunting here. I think it's the exact opposite. I think you need to get guys that want the opportunity to play in the SEC, want the opportunity to play for a Hall of Fame coach, want the opportunity to be on a team that is good enough to make a Final Four, and are comfortable being 8, 9, 10, 11 minute a game guys. I keep using these examples, but really quickly. 2 years ago, UConn national championship team. Have I said it before? I have. I know I have, and I'm sorry if you guys are getting annoyed that I keep using this as an example. But Joey Calcaterra was a player who committed to UConn in like July. He came from the University of San Diego, and he basically was brought in as a practice player. Dan Hurley was on the record telling him, like, dude, you can come, but we don't know if there's playing time for you. And Joey Calcaterra, all he said was, we just want the opportunity. I just want the opportunity where if I play well enough, I will have the opportunity to step on the court. And so I don't think you can freak out. By the way, we talked about it a few weeks ago, the Ansley Almanor kid who committed to Kentucky. Everyone wants to make fun of Mark Pope. Oh, he chose Kentucky over Siena. And I think it was like Pepperdine. Everyone's like, oh, poverty program, Mark Pope. It's like, no. Mark Pope knows that his 11th man can't be a guy that expects to play 31 minutes a game. And so I think those guys are out there. I don't have names. You know, I've seen like a KK Robinson who actually began his career at Arkansas, played at Little Rock last year. Like, that's a perfect example of a guy. Go to him and say, bro, you're from Arkansas. You want to finish your career on a team that's good enough to make a Final Four? Come here, be our 9th guy. Come here, be our backup point guard, whatever. That's just an example. There's other guys, there's other opportunities. And so in my opinion, I just don't think you have to freak out if you're Arkansas or John Calipari. And I know for a fact that Cal is not going to. That's not who he is. That's not what he's about. And I still think there are plenty of good players for Arkansas to go get. I would not be freaking out if I was Cal. You have 8 really good players. You need to be focusing on backfilling with guys that are comfortable playing roles, and you need to be comfortable. You don't have to be big game hunting, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make. I love the 8 you have. You don't need to go too crazy.